As a community moves towards despotism, respect is restricted to fewer people.
That's veteran Denver police officer Charles Jones IV smashing an unarmed suspect in the face 6 times.
Officers accused of using excessive force on a suspect and then trying to erase the evidence.
I'm observing what they're doing and they're arresting me. I don't understand what's going on.
A community rates low on an information scale when the press, radio, and other channels of communication are controlled by only a few people.
Does it raise ethical questions about the use of government money to produce stories about the government that wind up being aired with no disclosure that they were produced by the government?
How can you ask such a question?
What difference at this point does it make?
When a competent observer looks for signs of despotism in a community, he looks beyond fine words and noble phrases.
There are actions I have the legal authority to take as president that will help make our immigration system more fair and more just. Tonight, I'm announcing those actions.
What I say goes, see? I'm the law around here.
We came, we saw, he died.
Yes, in modern warfare, our military leaders are finding that words and ideas are highly effective weapons.
We just have to be repetitive about this. We need to do this every day of the week and just really brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way.
We are trained to deceive if we have to. You really don't have to trust me. You shouldn't trust me. In fact, by my actually participating in that, I will taint the news.
In communities of this kind, despotism stands a good chance.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Okay, Ms. Hughes, well, we're going to do everything we can to help
you. Resistance to tyrants is obedience to God.
Get Brain Force at 25% off for a limited time at InfoWarsLife.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been on this the last few months. You probably noticed I've been more crazed, more focused, less brain fog, more energy, more special reports, and it's because of Brain Force.
One of the worst things with most energy products is it's not sustainable, right? You're gonna crash afterwards. And the cool thing about this is it's not just a bunch of energy compounds that are gonna fire your brain up to a higher RPM or whatever, which it does do. This is sustainable. This isn't going to spike and you're gonna collapse and you're gonna feel really bad afterwards. This has a bunch of different antioxidants and compounds and polyphenols.
Everybody's on these drugs to knock their brain out because the brain's so fried.
We're looking at the television screen for research purposes, whatever we've been doing, trying to learn something, or staring at the computer all day, working, doing good. You're still damaging your brain.
You will find Brain Force and other game-changing products at InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.
Get Brain Force at 25% off for a limited time at InfoWarsLife.com. And we thank you for your support.
In the past decade, we have witnessed unparalleled scientific discoveries in the area of health. But no one has put together a formula that focuses directly on brain health, nerve growth factors, and optimizing your cellular energy at the same time. DNA Force is one of the most expensive formulas to produce. Some of the ingredients in DNA Force are $12,000 a kilogram. We are using the coveted, patented, only American source of PQQ, CoQ10, and more. You want the best that's out there at the lowest price anywhere? Well, we're bringing you a total win-win. The ultimate value, cutting-edge, trailblazing game changer that also supports the InfoWar. We have produced a limited run of DNA Force, and it will take up to 12 weeks to produce more once we sell out. Secure your DNA Force today at InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139.
It's stimulating, mind-expanding, safer to use than alcohol. It's the in thing. Such are the myths concerning marijuana. Myths that lull thousands of young people into experimenting with the noxious weed.
Marijuana, the burning weed with its roots in hell.
Should marijuana be legalized? We'll debate the pros and cons right now.
Marijuana leads to doing worse things. That's just a fact. I don't care what anybody says.
The drug war is a total failure, and the federal drug war ought to be revisited and, for the most part, gotten rid of.
This has corrupted our government, it has destroyed our due process, and it is withholding from people medicine that is very effective, and we need to stop it. We need to roll prohibition back right now.
Marijuana is natural. You know, there's so many different things that you can use it for, including, you know, helping cancer patients.
I'm a Christian minister.
Yeah.
And I believe, you know, Jesus will be okay with it.
There have been studies proven that children who have 400 seizures a day, that's intense. That's like a seizure a minute, who can't stop just violently convulsing, have been helped and have stopped having seizures up like 2 to 3 days after applying the cannabinoid oil treatment to themselves, like in their food or something like that. Like, that's incredible. There's proof of that. Like, it's all over the internet.
The mandatory minimums locking people up for non-violent crimes for very long periods of time where there's no discretion for the fact that they were non-violent, that this is their first offense. No, just lock them up.
You two-bit heroes, making life miserable for innocent children. Why don't you go out and hunt real criminals?
We got a tip on this drag race, but when we found the marijuana, well, sir, that's a very serious charge.
Think about the tens of billions of dollars that Big Pharma makes a year, with close to 20% of the population being on antidepressants, when every major study shows that marijuana absolutely destroys depression in people, and Prozac can't even prove that it has any measurable positive effect, and they have to put on the insert that it may make you commit suicide.
Things like alcohol kill people daily, and it's legal because it can be taxed.
Happy to deliver alcohol. But weed is illegal, right?
Hey, bud, let's party.
I do think, however, that the pharmaceutical company should stay away. Like, just keep it natural. Let's have the sun out, you know, like roast the seeds in the dirt. You know, like, just stay away, you know, let it be, you know, like, let it grow organically, and like that's what will help people. It definitely should not be legal, because that's helping us make money on the streets.
And prohibition. That's right. Peace. What's the obstacle? What the hell is stopping it? Why is Texas taking so long?
Because we're in Texas, dude.
Yeah.
They haven't figured out how to make money off of it yet. They're looking at all the benefits from other states. They're just so fucking right wing. They don't care about the health benefits. They know that we're making so much money off the cancer and whatnot. They want us to be unhealthy.
There's so many benefits for something that's natural. We need to look more into natural medicines and not things that are scientifically made in a lab.
This is not reefer madness. This is one big industry that has political clout trying to shut down another industry that basically has a product that grows freely and is not owned by anybody.
I don't want the government regulating my marijuana.
Okay, but right now they're regulating you. They'll arrest you if you smoke it. That's regulation.
But only if I get caught.
Look at what the pharmaceutical companies are doing. They want to take away our informed consent and violate the Nuremberg Code, saying that they can inject us with whatever they deem to be necessary at any given time. We should be very, very concerned about this.
I didn't know you were a weed head, Tony.
All my friends are.
The biggest cheerleaders, unfortunately, for drug prohibition are the Christians, and they need to hear David Simpson's perspective on this. Joining us now is David Simpson, Texas representative. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Simpson.
Well, it's a delight to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, and thank you for putting this. Thank you for your work. I tell you what, if people want to know who the heir to Ron Paul is, it's this guy. This guy is my hero, I tell you. Talk to us about the about what you would do with medical marijuana. What's your approach? What would you say to Christians who want to use the hammer of government, who see everything as a nail that needs to be hit down with force?
Well, I first of all, I like to focus on the proper role of government. And you can just go right to Romans 13, and it talks about how God gave the civil magistrate the sword. And sword is an image of force. It can prod, it can punish. Its duty is to punish the wrongdoer. But it's interesting, it's not every wrongdoing. The commandments that the Apostle Paul focuses on in the middle of the chapter, after talking about the magistrate's role, are the second table of the law: not murdering, not stealing, not bearing false witness, or even planning to do so. That's the role of the civil magistrate, is to punish the wrongdoer who harms his neighbor, taking away his life, liberty, or property. And it doesn't touch the first table of the law. That's the first thing. We don't want the civil government telling us how and when to worship and who to worship. That's something that must be we must follow as individuals according to our conscience, led captive, hopefully, by the Word of God. The other thing I'd focus on with respect to marijuana is that you start with a world that God created good, and including all its plants. And some people misinterpreted my statement about that, but you have to start there. Certainly, good things that God made can be abused, but in 1 Timothy 4:4, it says that everything is to be received if it can be done so with thanksgiving, and that would assume faith. And so what led me to repeal all the prohibitions for punishing people for possessing or cultivating or selling marijuana is we shouldn't ban a plant that God made. We should focus on irresponsible actions that harm our neighbor. If you haven't harmed your neighbor, then the punishment, the government shouldn't be involved. Now, do our neighbors need help if they abuse something? Perhaps, but I don't think it's a sword. I think it's a loving, faithful approach. But those are some of the things God not only made things.
I just talked to a former prosecutor last week. We talked to Jim Gierach with Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. That's an organization of former prosecutors, former police officers, some of them still active, but most of them are retired. They don't want to see prohibition. They understand how it's counterproductive. They understand how it destroys our liberties. It corrupts government. They've seen that happen. And Jim Gierach is at the United Nations this week trying to get them to change their focus, attacking this at the top level, trying to get them to change their focus from law enforcement to recognizing that it's a medical issue. And as Christians, we ought to recognize that it's a spiritual issue. And we're going to come back, and I want to talk to, right after the break, I want to talk to David Simpson about how differently he would unregulate marijuana as opposed to the way they've done it out west in the states where they've passed initiatives, heavily regulating it, heavily taxing it, creating a web of entrapment for people. David Simpson's bill would not do that. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host, and we're talking to David Simpson, a Texas representative who has just introduced some legislation that would remove marijuana from the Texas legal code completely. And we're going to talk to him about the implications of that. I wanted to have him on especially because he addresses Christian issues. And as David Simpson was pointing out in the last segment, and as he wrote in an op-ed piece for the Dallas Morning News, he said the Bible warns about excessive drinking, eating, and sleeping, but it doesn't ban eating, drinking, and sleeping, or the substances or conditions associated with eating, drinking, and sleeping. So you can do that excessively, but it doesn't ban those things. He said there is a place for prohibition. There is a place for prohibition. It's prohibiting aggression. And he was just talking about Romans 13. Certainly as conservative Republicans, conservative Christian Republicans, the main supporters of the war on drugs need to understand they ought to instantly be revolted by this because of just what happens with private property. Look at civil asset forfeiture, where you're not charged with a crime, you're not convicted of a crime, they charge your property with the crime, and they confiscate your property. See, that's the kind of destruction of due process that happens under prohibition.